Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article is speaking about automated facial recognition technology. This is a technology which recognizes the people how by comparing the facial features in real time with that of the stored information which is already present in a watch list. What is this watch list? This can be an image which is stored in the police database, or this can be an image which is present on the social media account. Let's say for example you are walking. There is a CCTV which captures your image. This image that is captured by the CCTV will be tested with the already existing image which is present with the police or in the social media account. That is what is called as the facial recognition technique. How does this basically work? Basically, this works by scanning the geometry of a face to recognize the key features. What are these key features? This will identify the nose size, eye shape, chin prominence, and this will also measure the distance between them as well. Once this image is created, a virtual map of a face is created. This virtual map will identify and then sync the same with the image already present in the watch list. So basically the real image that is captured will be taken, a virtual map would be designed, and this virtual map will be synced with the already existing image on the computer or on the watch list. That is how they would be able to come to a conclusion whether this particular person is the right person or not. So what is the importance of this particular facial recognition? The technology greatly improves the power of surveillance. How? Let me give you an example. We have the network of cameras which are usually present in a particular area. They automatically track all the individuals as they move in and move out of the coverage area, even if there is no information about that particular person. So the police officers who are watching the movement of the people would also be able to capture the criminals because of the surveillance of that particular person. So this helps in nabbing all the criminals and also making sure that we improvise on the public safety as well. So this surveillance which is taken up by the police officers will be one where there is a vigilant eyes by all the police officers. This technology will also help us making inroad into the underworld as well. How? Most of the underworld or the gangsters are usually underground. They would not be able to come out because they would be captured by the police and they would be put behind bars as well. But let's say because of the CCTVs, in case this person who is elusive does come out into the forum, that is when the surveillance cameras captures it, and we would also be able to dig deep into the underworld as well. These are some of the advantages when it comes to the facial technology, but there are problems that are associated with it. What are those problems? One is with respect to the data protection law. Let's say for example the police officers or any other investigating agencies is conducting a surveillance. What is the extent to which they can conduct the surveillance? Why? Because we do not have the data protection law. What if this particular law is very opaque? What if this particular direction is very vague, or this can be misused, abused, or overused? That means that this particular surveillance by the automated recognition technology can also be misused by the police personnel or the investigating agencies. Since there are no specific laws, since there are no guidelines, since there are no restrictions given under a particular law, that is where it can be misused, is the first major problem. Right? Activists even say that this is a violation of the privacy as well. How? Because we do not know what is happening with our image. We do not know who is watching us. In fact, this is also violating the landmark judgment of the Supreme Court of India, that which was made in Justice K.S. Puttaswamy versus the Union of India, because there is increasing cases of surveillance, and this particular facial recognition can also be prone to error, which can implicate people for the crimes that they haven't committed. This also means that our constitutional principle of right to privacy, which is guaranteed under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, can be violated, say the right activists in the present scenario. So kindly remember, in this particular scenario, if they are violating the privacy, it can also lead to harassment of innocent citizens, which is not uncommon during this process of surveillance. In 2018, we also have the Delhi police, which became one of the first law enforcement agencies in the country to use this particular technology. So this surveillance technology using the facial recognition technology was given permission by the government as well as by the Delhi High Court. Why did the Delhi High Court give this permission? That is because of the increasing cases of missing children. So what was the permission given for? This is to find out why children are missing, where are they going, who's kidnapping them. So the whole idea or the Delhi High Court judgment was in reference to the missing children. But this particular idea is getting expanded. So all those areas where they were not given permission, they are also entering those domains as well, which means they have exceeded their power than given by the Delhi High Court. The power should have been ideally restricted to identify where are these missing children in case they are being kidnapped, or what is the message that we are sending to the society in terms of surveillance. But unfortunately, the powers have been superseded, expanded for the misuse, says this article. Also note, there was an RTI application which was filed with respect to the Delhi police asking for the powers. Where are they deriving it from? What are the guidelines given to them? What were the restrictions imposed on them? But the Delhi police were not able to answer the right to information request made by one of the person. And at the same time, if this particular surveillance continues without law, it is bound to impact the citizens as well. How? Let's say for example, right to protest is one of the fundamental right under Article 19. It also means in case I have a grievance, if the government is not actually looking into it, I step onto the road on a designated place without any arms and I voice my grievance to the government. But what if these CCTV cameras capture my image? What if these CCTV camera images that are captured will haunt me in the near future? So the police can also arrest me as well. They can put me behind the bars as well. So it means it will have a chilling effect on the freedom of speech and expression as well. So what is it violating? It is violating the fundamental rights guaranteed under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution. So the right to protest as well as the freedom of speech and expression is violating because the CCTV or the surveillance mechanism present with the police officers, present with the government, has captured me voicing my grievance against the government. As a result, the freedom of speech and expression is also violated, says this article. Apart from these issues of institutional as well as law related, there are other technical challenges as well. Facial recognition systems vary in their ability to identify people. Why? Because under challenging conditions such as poor lighting, low quality image resolution, it will not be able to capture and it will also not be able to diagnose whether it is that person who is captured in that particular image. And as we all know, there are fingerprints and DNA which does not change for the entire lifetime of that particular person. But that is not the same when it comes to the facial recognition. What if a person goes through a cosmetic surgery? What if he has a plastic surgery? What about aging? What about cosmetics? What about the pose of the subject? All this will also have to be taken into picture as well. Because of these technical difficulties that which we have, there can be false positives or there can be false negatives as well. What is this false positive? Instead of recognizing one person, it recognizes some other person. What is this false negative? Where the system refuses to recognize this particular person. Because of all the technical issues, it can also lead to what is called as false positive, and false negative is the major issue. So India is currently suffering with what is called as the COVID-19. If there are no laws, what we will have is the facial recognition pandemic, which ultimately no safeguards, no remedies, which also harms or excludes people and profiles and surveillances them. In fact, the article goes on to conclude that such systems of mass surveillance will erode democratic liberties and threaten the rights of lakhs of Indians because of this mass surveillance. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says government note for missions in Estonia, Paraguay, and Dominican Republic. We have the government of India, which has gone on to announce that there will be new missions in Estonia, Paraguay, and Dominican Republic. What do we mean by this? Does it mean that India did not have any diplomatic relationship with all these countries? No. India did have all the diplomatic connections with these countries. We did have regular exchanges as well. But our embassies, our security forces, our people in that particular country were not present. So as a result, with this particular notification and announcement, what we will have is an embassy that will be constructed in Estonia, Paraguay, and Dominican Republic. We will have our Indian ambassador. We will also have the personnel and the security people who will be present in that particular country. Now you might ask me a question. If there is no embassy in that particular country, how will the interrelationship between one country and another country happen? In the present scenario, it can be India and Estonia, it can be India and Paraguay, or India and Dominican Republic. Let me explain this for you. With reference to Estonia, what we have is embassy which is present in Finland. So we have the Indian embassy which is present in Finland, and all the communications with respect to Estonia will also happen in the embassy of Finland. So all the queries, information, visas for visiting and doing business in India, Estonian nationals are welcome to contact the embassy in Helsinki, says the embassy of India when it comes to Finland. So when it comes to Estonian relationship, what we have is one embassy which is present in Finland. So all the relationship with respect to Estonia can also be discussed in this part of the embassy. But going forward, what we will have is a separate embassy which will be established in Estonia. Until now, it was present only in Finland. So all the talkings with respect to Estonia and its diplomatic relationship had to happen from Finland, and going forward, everything will be established in Estonia. So we will have our people, we will have our embassy office, we will have our building, we will have our security personnel. So everything will be based in Estonia. Going forward is what is this notification all about. What will be the advantages of this establishment? The article currently goes on to say the opening of the missions will help expand India's diplomatic footprint, deepen political relations, enable grant of bilateral trade, investment and economic engagements, facilitate stronger people to people contacts, bolster political outreach in multilateral flora, and help garner support for the foreign policy. What is this last point that it is speaking about? Let's say, for example, in the United Nations Security Council, India is asking for a permanent membership. So these countries will help us indirectly if there is an embassy. Is what is this? Help garner support for the foreign policy. Or let's say, for example, India has taken an initiative with respect to stopping all the foreign funding when it comes to the terrorism. If such an initiative is taken, these countries will support our cause, is what is this point all about. Apart from this, this particular diplomatic presence will also provide market access for the private companies and bolster our exports of goods and services. And as a result, what we have is this particular mission taken up in all these countries where India will establish its mission in Estonia, Paraguay, and Dominican Republic. Now the important question is, why should we have the Indian embassy in these countries? While we already had it in Finland, what was the need of coming up with such an initiative? Does it not mean that India will require a new ambassador in that particular place, more people who have to be present? So India would be spending more in the present scenario by establishing an embassy in Estonia. So is it required? No, say some of the arguments. Why? Because we have advances in information technology, which actually means in case we do not have enough number of Indian people in that particular area, everything can literally happen on the information technology. In case you want to speak to someone, you can have a virtual summit. In case you want to send an email, you can do it. In case you want to take upon something important, you can immediately call them up. So everything is secured on the information and technology. So what is the need of establishing the embassy while we are spending huge amount of money is the first important factor. So because there is already advancement of information technology and we can cut down on the spending, why come up with this establishment of an embassy is the first point. The second important fact is, let's say we cannot actually conduct proceedings on a virtual platform, which is by the information and technology. We in a present situation would be able to connect any part of the world within 24 hours. So air travel allows an official to be anywhere in the world. So what is the need of establishing an embassy is the second major factor. The third important factor is that, let's say for example, we have to identify what is happening in a particular country. Let's say for example, in West Asia, let's say there is oil crisis, or let's say for example there is a terrorist activity, or there is skirmishes between one country and another. Do we actually require physical presence? No. Why? Because the internet penetration is so much that whatever is happening in any country, with the click of a button we would know what is present in that particular country. It can be the Arab Spring, it can be the unemployment crisis, or it can be a fight between terrorist organizations and the government as well. Everything literally will be known with the click of a particular internet. So what is the need of establishing the embassy is the third point. So all these pointers mean that the requirement of an embassy, the physical presence of our personnel in that particular country is not important, is the one point of the article. The other part that we have to focus is, all this is fair enough, but physical presence or the embassy in that particular relationship will be a commitment to the deepening bilateral relations. Only when we have that particular embassy established in that country, what we are sending is goodwill to the people of that country. It is saying that we are physically present in your country and we respect your relationship and we want to further explore and increase the bilateral relationship with the country. So all these factors say that embassy is not required, but embassies are required. Why? Because this is a goodwill gesture, this is a commitment factor, and this is an obligation for the country to actually enhance the relationship with another country. So this particular embassy will also provide an insight into what is going on in the host country. If you have to access information about West Asia, what you would be able to know is through the internet. But if you have our personnel, our people in that particular area, what is required for India, such information can be gathered. But if our people are not there, it will be general information. What is good for India might not be present. So if we have an embassy, we would have our personnel, we would also have the information gatherers. Such information can be used by India or for any country as to what is important for them. General information would be present, but a specific information with reference to that country which is important for India might not be present. So the ground personnel who are present in the field will extract this information and deliver the same to India. The third is the competition for access to market and resource remains. Let's say for example in African country, or let's say for example in South American countries, India is also in a competition mode with China. Why is it in competition mode to China? Because we have to capture the market, we have to export our products. Only when we know what is required in that particular area, only when we know what is required in that particular region is where India would have an advantage. So India has its own reserves of advantages. It can be pharmacy, it can be IT services. If there is a dearth in that particular area, this would be identified by the ground staff. The same can be reported to the central ministry. So the central ministry can engage with that particular country. So how is it possible? That is through the mission. How is it possible? Because we have our personnel. So the competition for access to the markets will be much expanding if we have our personnel in that particular region. And finally, we have number of people who are on the global migration spree. There are also instances where human rights abuses have been conducted against Indians. They have been seen and treated very poorly as well. Who will take care of the Indians? It is the Indian embassy. It is the pride of the Indian embassy to take care of our citizens. So we require the Indian embassy in every country, because even if it is 100, even if it is 1000, they are the citizens of India, and it is the onus of the government of India to protect every citizen of India. So the global migration means that they would have traveled for the job opportunities or for tourism or for any cultural exposure as well. If they enter into that particular region and if they are kidnapped or if there is human rights violation, it is the Indian embassy which will take care of the Indian citizens. Only when they are present on the ground they would know the impact of it. So what we require is the embassy. So these are the arguments which goes on to say that establishment of this embassy in a particular country is very important. Because of all these advantages, we should be taking forward and establishing embassy in Estonia, Paraguay and Dominican Republic is another set of arguments that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says separating the wheat from agri policy chaff. The article here is speaking about subsidies given by the government to the farming community and the reasons for rolling out such subsidies. Before we understand what is this article in greater detail, what is the meaning of agricultural subsidy? Basically, this is a benefit given by the government of the respective states or the government of India to whom? To the farmers and agri businesses, so that they can reduce their losses, reduce their costs, and ultimately this will improvise their income over a period of time. So basically, the agricultural subsidy is for the goodwill of the farmer. But this is also being abused, say certain sections of the people. Why? Let's look into the argument. When you look into the key statistics, in the year 1950 to 51, agricultural share in the country's GDP was 45%. The share of the workforce dependent on the sector was close to 70%. Then 7 decades later, that is today, the agricultural share in GDP is about 16%, but almost 50% of the country's workforce depend still on this sector. So what you see is that the GDP when it comes to the agriculture is been dropping consistently, but the workforce, the proportional reduction is not happen, says the first factual information. And if the agricultural sector has to improvise, it has to reduce the number of people in this particular sector, what we require is the investments made by the government of India or by the respective states. But that is where the major problem is, because the governments are not investing, this sector is suffering, says the statistics. What does it say? The share of this sector in the total investments undertaken in the country consistently fell from about 18% in 1950s to just 11% in the 1980s, and now it is less than 10%, says this article. So because there is no investment, because there are large number of people, because the farmers are not able to make profits because of lack of investment, as a result, what we require is the subsidy that has to be given by the government of India is the first argument. So what is the first argument? Because of lack of investment, there is need for subsidy is the first point that this article speaks about. The second important point it speaks about is in reference to the yield. What is the yield? Basically, when we are speaking about the crop yield, this is nothing but the measurement of the output of that particular agricultural commodity in a particular unit area. If you are comparing the crop yield for rice or for wheat, the comparative analysis of India with, let's say for example, United States of America or with the European countries in a unit area, the yield in United States of America and European countries would be comparatively on the upper hand in comparison to India. So because the yield is on a lower side in India, the farmers are the major sufferers. That is why subsidies have to be provided to the farming sector. The third is about the market access. Farming sector is also suffering because of the issues with respect to the APMCs, and farmers in fact have a biggest problem, and that also happens to be the middlemen as well, because they are not able to make large profits, because it is the middlemen who take away all their profits away. Because of this suffering, lack of access, lack of profits, lack of income, That is why the government has to provide the subsidy is the third major factor. The fourth important factor that we have to look is in reference to the policies. Whenever there is a policy that is being drafted, a law that comes into picture, the stakeholders will have to be taken into picture. Who are the stakeholders? It is the farming community. In most of the cases, there is top-down approach rather than the bottom-up approach. As a result, what we have is the ad hoc policies. The government of India should draw some lessons from the United States of America or from the European Common Market, says this article. What is that we can learn from United States of America? United States, with less than 2% of its workforce as engaged in agriculture, they have come up with what is called as the Agricultural Adjustment Act in the year 1933. The minute this act was drafted, it is changed periodically. Legislations are changed over a period of time. They are consulted, and whatever is the issue has been resolved, says this particular article. Further, when we are looking into the European Common Market, it has also adopted the Common Agricultural Policy in the year 1962, and it changes these policies taking into the stakeholder in picture. So the United States of America and European countries have been able to bring this reform with respect to the policy, but the same is not there with respect to India. Since these policies in India are not able to address the needs of the farming sector, they are not able to provide proactive support to the farming community. As a result, what we require is the subsidy, which happens to be the fourth point. So, what are the major issues? One is with respect to the investment, second is with respect to the yield, third is with respect to the market where the farmers are not able to make profits, and fourth is with respect to the policies. Because there is a comprehensive issue of government not enabling the farmers to explore couple of options that they have. As a result, subsidy has to be provided, says this article. But the article goes on to say that this issue of subsidy cannot be continued forever. Why? Because they have failed on the investment front, because they have failed on the policy front, because they are not able to provide market to the farmers, and because the technological advancement, research and development is not taking place with respect to the yield of a crop. It is the farmer who is suffering. Had the government invested in all these primary areas, they would not have required so much of subsidies. In fact, subsidies are being exploited by the resource rich farmers. Inputs are being taken inefficiently, and this has also led to environmental degradation, says this article. As a result, going forward, subsidies will not work forever, eternally. What we require is a policy change, a new framework. That is what the government has to initiate, says the article. In fact, if we are not going to change it, the minimum support prices have to be provided to the farmers, and in this particular case, what we will have is excessive food stockpiling, which will ultimately be food for the rats as well as pests, and it is the people who are going to suffer and the government who is going to suffer because of these subsidies, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says give adequate time for a probe. The article here is speaking about the Maharashtra government's proposal to come up with a legislation for women's security and safety from sexual offences. What is this article all about has been explained on 21st December 2020. Kindly look into it to understand the background and the provisions of this particular legislation. Our focus today would only be with respect to the timeline of the particular investigation. What has the Maharashtra government done here? It has given a particular timeline before which all the investigation will have to be completed by the investigation officer. But this article currently goes on to say that that is a flawed approach taken by the Maharashtra government. The author, who happens to be a senior IPS officer in Chhattisgarh cadre, says that this should not be so. Why? Because whenever there is a timeline or a restriction given to the investigating officer, they might miss out on key parameters of that particular crime, says the author in this particular case. What does the author say here? He says that the time for investigation depends on the severity of the case, the number of accused persons, and the agencies involved. First, let us take the example of severity of the crime. Let's say, for example, if it is a heinous crime. Let's go back to the year 2012. This was one of the heinous crimes that we had seen in the history of India. What exactly happened? You had number of people who had gang raped a woman. They also absconded as well. So the number of accused were more in number. So the police officers had to literally find out the number of people, 4 to 5 number, that they had to go and catch them as well. And finally, we also have other agencies that are also involved. It should be the forensic science. It can also be the other department which is looking into the victim. It can be the hospital reports. So what you have is there are number of accused and you have different agencies that is working and supporting the investigating agencies. While it is not only the police officers who take care of this investigation, but this will also require the support of the forensics as well as the hospitals and the doctor. So how can we restrict and come up with a particular timeline is the first important factor asked by the author. He also says that whenever there is a heinous act that is committed, this will require the inspection of this particular crime. This will also require the victim to be asked questions as well. And in most of the cases of rape, the victim is in a trauma. You cannot actually go and pressurize the victim. Why? Because the victim has to overcome this particular issue. So this might take days, this might take weeks. So how can the investigating officer pressurize the victim? So the second factor is about victim in trauma, where you cannot traumatize or you cannot go and pressure that particular victim is the second factor. The third factor is about specialization. What is it about specialization? Let's say, for example, if there is a crime that is committed in a particular area, if that particular area has a police station, if that police station has people, but whether the police station and its personnel are they experts in law and order maintenance, or they are also good at investigation as well. Why? Because investigation is altogether a different ball game. It requires expertise, it requires analysis of a particular crime as well. In most of the rural areas in India, most of the police officers are engaged in maintaining law and order issues. They might not have the capacity, or they might not have the intellectual capacity to take upon the investigation. As a result, the process may get delayed as well. So these are the number of issues as to why there has to be a limitation, but this is way too less in the state of Maharashtra, says this article. But for the rest of the other important provisions, go back and visit our 21st December analysis for the comprehensive analysis with respect to this legislation. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about all the issues that which is surfacing in the country of Nepal. We did discuss about the internal turmoil. We did also discuss that China is interfering in the internal affairs of Nepal. But what we have to understand is that Nepal did not seek for the Chinese delegation, but it is Chinese delegation who have come uninvited, says this article. So what is happening here? This happens to be China's brazen interference into the internal affairs of Nepal, and at the same time, the minute it has happened, we also have the students and activists who are protesting against China. Nepal happens to be the only country where you have the Communist Party of China, which wields a certain leverage in that particular country. There might also be communist parties in Vietnam or Laos or Cuba, but it has no influence in all these countries, but it is present in Nepal. That is because of the huge investments that they have made in the country of Nepal. Even before the present political crisis took place in Nepal, we have the Communist Party of China, which has held all the virtual workshops giving lessons to the Nepali leaders on to how the country has to be run, because we have the Nepal Communist Party which is at the helm of the affairs, says this article. But we have discussed majority of these aspects, and we will also take this up going forward as well. Now let's look into the next article. This article says straws in the wind in South Bloc. This article currently goes on to capture what has happened in the foreign relationship for the past 1 year. Most of these issues have been discussed. In case you want to have a quick run, kindly go through this article because all the issues have been covered in a comprehensive basis. So this article just gives a gist of different issues that has happened in the past 1 year. So kindly go through it. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Equator passes through which of the following countries in South America? Guyana, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Paraguay. The answer to this is 2, 3, and 4. So, which are the countries? We have Brazil, Colombia, and Ecuador. Why have we taken this practice question? Because we did discuss about Paraguay. So, we should know where is Paraguay. So, when it comes to South America, we have three countries where equator passes through. One is Brazil, the second is Colombia, the third is Ecuador. And when it comes to the Tropic of Capricorn, we have countries like Paraguay, Argentina, Chile, as well as Brazil, where Tropic of Capricorn passes through. Kindly remember this map. It can be very important for the map based questions. Then we also have to have a fair bit of an idea about Dominican Republic as well. Where is it? It is in close by to Haiti as a country and close by to Cuba. Kindly remember the maps. It can be very important for your preliminary questions. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following pairs: Mukurti National Park, Telangana; Kaudinya Wildlife Sanctuary, Karnataka; Dibru-Saikhowa National Park, Assam. Which of the above pairs is correctly matched? The answer to this is 3 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, we have the Kaudinya Wildlife Sanctuary, which is not present in Karnataka, but it is in Andhra Pradesh, and Mukurti National Park, not present in Telangana, but instead it is in Tamil Nadu. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are the major ports in India? Mangaluru Port, Krishnapatnam, Paradeep, Panaji Port, and JNPT. The answer to this is 1, 3, and 5. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember which are the major ports that we have. We have the Haldia Port, Paradeep Port, Vishakhapatnam Port, Kamraj Port, Chennai Port, VO Chidambaram Port, Cochin Port, New Mangalore Port, Marmagaon Port, JNPT, Mumbai Port, as well as Kundla Port. Also remember, it can be very important from your preliminary point, which Indian state has the maximum number of major port. That happens to be Tamil Nadu. This article currently goes on to say that the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has approved 3 infrastructure projects, and as a result what we will have is more greenfield industrial cities. This will give rise to employment and ultimately the transport hub, which will provision for the rail as well as road. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following is or the surface to air missiles? Akash, Spider, and Trishul. The answer to this is 1, 2, and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, all the 3 are the surface to the air missiles. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to foreign direct investments in India, which one of the following is considered its major characteristic? The answer to this is it is largely non-debt creating capital flow. Now let's look into the mains practice question. Should India establish new embassies to conduct its international relations or leverage the modern technology to cut back on spending? Critically examine. Subsidies and money doles by the government may not be enough to end farmers' woes. Examine the statement and suggest alternative interventions. Please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and also come up with some constructive criticism. On the account of New Year, we would not be having the Hindu analysis tomorrow on our Byju's IAS YouTube channel. Wish you all a happy and a prosperous New Year in advance, and we will meet you on 2nd of January. Hope all your good dreams come true in the next 1 year. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.